I think a common belief among entrepreneurs, when you go in business, you're going to make a lot of money, you're going to be successful. It just doesn't happen that way. Going in business is taking on a big challenge. So I would tell entrepreneurs,
Meet Bob Labbe. He is the owner and partner of the Ultimate Drink Coaster Company, a tech engineer who built and sold 3 companies over 5 decades and still isn't done.
we were fortunate. My partner, John Halligan, he and I became great friends, but John and I were the perfect fit for partners because what he liked to do, I didn't, and what I didn't like to do, he liked. We argued a lot, but there was always one commonality about when we argued. We argued because we were trying to get to a better solution.
Being a leader for 50 years and 3 companies in the same field can be very easy for your ego to be like, no, I know what I'm talking about. This is the direction. This is what needs to happen. How did you have to shift and say, no, I need to trust my people also?
Well,
As you've been listening to this guest, you're probably starting to ask your questions. How do I apply this to our own situation, our own succession story at the company that I'm working in now? At GWCPA, we have built a custom GPT that you can find linked down in the description below on our website. We have loaded this GPT up with all of our knowledge about public accounting and tax preparation around succession planning. We've also included the insights from the guests from the past 2 years of interviews at the Art of Succession. You can find all of that at the custom GPT. Use it any time of day. Start to apply it to your situation. Ask it the questions that are keeping you awake at night. I want to thank you for listening so far, and let's get back to the episode.
Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is Bob Labbe, serial entrepreneur, engineer, and inventor. He's started and sold multiple companies in his career, with the most recent one being sold to family and still advising in a limited capacity. His latest undertaking was seeing a unique need for an everyday object, and he's here to share his experience with us on the podcast today. Bob, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Barrett, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Very good. So that is my first question I always lead with is, what is it that interests you in this conversation? What is it that brings you to the Art of Succession podcast? What is it that you would want our guests to walk away with from this conversation, most important?
Well, as you say, I have become an inventor, and the latest thing I've invented was the drink coaster, when we call it the Ultimate Drink Coaster Company, and it's the only coaster in the entire world that works. And I invented it because I never found a drink coaster in my entire life that did work, and it's kind of been a pet peeve, and It all culminated back in October of 2023 when I was at my daughter's house in Atlanta, and we were having a couple cocktails before we went out to a very nice restaurant. We were all dressed to our nines, and I picked up my Manhattan to take a sip of it, and a leather coaster like this one right here fell off and landed on my beautiful silk tie, my suit coat, on my pants, and down on her floor or carpet, and wood floor and carpet, and that left a stain on my silk tie that was not able to be removed. So that's what I told my daughter Kelly. I said, okay, I'm going to invent a drink coaster that works, and this is the final product.
Okay. Let's get started with what brought you to this point. Can you share just a little bit of where your industry was, the businesses that you started, and let's go back in time to that experience that you've gained over the years.
I'm an engineer from Georgia Tech. I graduated in 1968 and went to work for American Air Filter in Louisville, Kentucky. Spent 5 years with them and learning the air pollution control business. And being kind of an entrepreneurial type of guy, I ran into a fellow that we were giving speeches throughout the college system in Georgia, talking about air pollution control and the solutions and controls. And at lunch, we would have discussions with my future partner. And we did that for a couple of years. And by 1972, John Halligan and I just started our first air pollution control business, and we ran that 8 years before we sold it to a Swedish company, AB Baco, and we worked for them as executive vice president and vice president for 3 years, and then we decided that we were too much entrepreneurs to be working for somebody else. So we started a second company called Amerex Incorporated. We ran that business, started it from the beginning and developed it and grew it to a pretty good sized company and went on the NASDAQ exchange. And then we ended up selling it in 1996 and we retired at that point in time and we started playing golf. But, you know, after 6 or 7 years of retirement, my past employees from Amerex called me up and said, Bob, you need to start another company. And I was getting kind of tired of building things around the farm and the garden and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, you know, I'm still a young guy. I'm only like, I was like 60 years old at the time. So I did start a new company and we ran that for 20 more years. And I retired at the end of 23, another air pollution control company called Amerair. And I sold it to one of my employees and friends, and he's been operating it for the last 6 or 7 years himself. And I just consult once in a while at this point. So it's been an exciting ride through the years. As I think I told you before we started this conversation, I enjoyed my work so much, I never felt like I worked.
So, I mean, you started 3 companies that were in the exact same field or in the same vein of development?
Yeah, way it worked out, Barrett, when you start out in the beginning in 72, we were really neophytes. Although we were entrepreneurs, we started small. We started testing smokestacks, which is where we got started. And 6 months into business, we fabricated our first bag house for an asphalt plant, and we installed it, and we saw, gosh, you make a lot more money doing that than you climbing smokestacks. So we said, hey, why don't we get a fabrication shop? And so we did. So we moved up the gradual ladder, the scale, so to speak. And after 6 years of we did nuclear power plant testing, we did air pollution control testing, we did fabrication, erection, and equipment manufacturing, and we were so reasonably successful for a small company. We never did over $10 million a year in business during those years. We were acquired by AB Baco, which was a Swedish company, and they needed all of our talents, but they had a unique product called a compact cell filter that they thought would revolutionize the filtration business in the United States. We tried to take that to market for them for about 3 years and found out it really wasn't the solution they thought it was. And therefore, that's why we started our next business.
Okay. Were you upmarket again with that next business, or was it basically just restarting with you and your partner as owners of the same kind of?
My partner and I restarted by ourselves again, but because of our exposure in the first business, we were more a regional business to the southeastern part of the United States.
Okay.
But because of the exposure we got with AB Baco, we were in all over the United States and Canada with representatives and knowledge of the business. So the second business became a total North American continent type of business, and we even did business in Europe because of our association with AB Baco. So it was another leap in succession, so to speak.
So, I mean, you guys start this company, you're 25, 26 years old, the first one.
Right.
Talk to me about your progression as a leader. Were you on the operational side? Were you on the like CEO visionary side of the company? How did you progress through these companies and how did you figure out? Because you said you never felt like you worked a day. You loved everything that you did. As you look back on your career, what aspects really did you love about entrepreneurship and which ones did you hire out and have other people that love that aspect?
Well, we were fortunate. My partner, John Halligan, he and I became great friends, and we are still friends even today after knowing each other since 1970. And we've had a good lifetime relationship. But John and I were the perfect fit for partners because what he liked to do, I didn't, and what I didn't like to do, he liked. So we were the perfect complement to each other, and we lined up such that I was in charge of all pre-contract matters from sales and marketing to managing the representative system, and John was in charge of post-contract from the time we got an order to the time of processing that order to all the ancillary requirements of equipment and managing the people and the erection and the fabrication, etc. We both had 100% responsibilities in that area, but we oftentimes crossed over because John became, through the years, an extremely good salesman, and he made me a better engineer because of the association of the post-contract work. So we integrated well together and became great friends, lifetime friends.
That's great to hear. I mean, over the past 15 years or so, this has taken on a name. It's like the visionary integrator model of successful companies. And you being an inventor, I can see how you would fit in like the creative side, the sales side, the pre-delivery side. And then the integrator is like the operations, like here's what actually fulfilling the orders and everything. So, I mean, that's great. That partnerships are very difficult as you, I'm sure, are aware of. But to have a 50 plus year friendship and partnership is fantastic. Were there any times where one of you wanted to go at a different pace than the other one, or like one of the options to sell came up and one had to be convinced, or how did you guys work through that over the years?
Well, John and I, we argued a lot about a lot of things.
Yep.
There was always one commonality about when we argued. We argued because we were trying to get to a better solution. And that be because of that, the genuine intended purpose of our arguments always to get to the better solution. Those arguments were almost fun because you brought out these different viewpoints and you discussed the different viewpoints, and we would always come to a conclusion that we both totally agreed in. And that was really fun, having those kind of debates and interaction and getting to the right solution. And we got to a lot of right solutions along the way, which was made being an entrepreneur, you got to work long hours when you're an entrepreneur. And sometimes it wears on you, but when you're having fun, it's not as wearing as you think it is. And I always had fun.
Talk to me about, I guess, maybe a section of the career or a period where you made a huge risk, you took a huge risk and something didn't work out, something failed, and then how you and John worked through that, bounced back from that, learned from that to move forward. Because that's also part of being an entrepreneur, is trying things that don't work.
That's true. And we ran upon that happening about 2 years into our second company, Amerex. We had a big job proposal out on a steel mill in this country. It was about a $7 million project back in 1983. That was a big deal. Okay. And so we believed that we had such the right solution, and we were working so well with the people within the steel company that we thought the order was surely ours. Okay. And at the same time, we had another opportunity. We were working with a paper mill with a much smaller deal, just about $1.5 million deal. Well, lo and behold, that $7 million opportunity in the steel mill, the client upper management thought we were too small a company for them to do business with, and they chose not to do business. They took the order away from us. So that was a crusher, because we thought that was going to be a great job for us. Fortunately, we were saved by the pulp and paper mill that gave us the $1.5 million order, but that we were sweating bullets at the time, and it took us about 12 months to get over that loss. And so we learned from that thing: never put your eggs in one basket. Always have a lot of baskets going on at one time. And if you lose one of your baskets, it's not going to be your demise. Well, that loss was not our demise, but it certainly caused us a challenge.
Had you guys already started to scale in order to appeal for that larger contract, or done smaller ones for them, so you lost a chunk of that 7 million in them turning away the bigger job, or?
No, this would have been a new client to us, in
Okay.
the steel industry, so we didn't have any previous experience with them, and that's why it's ironic, but, years later, we did regular business with them. But in that particular early stages of Amerex, they thought we were a little too small, but we grew up by, 4 years later, and then we started doing regular business with them, and, it was no longer a problem. We had grown bigger, and, we were more substantial. So
Gotcha.
it worked out.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, for the listeners, how not getting a $7 million contract would put you in a bad position. Is it just that it had taken all your attention for so long through the proposal process that?
Yes, well, it did, and we were consuming our resources to get that contract, both, pre-contract and post-contract. Why? Because we made a lot of drawings, we made a lot of sales visits, we made a lot of plant visits, but one of the things we always did, we never overcommitted as far as a financial commitment to anything that was anything but an order. You know, John and I had enough resources that we could scale up very quickly with new people. We knew a lot of engineers, a lot of people in the construction business. And so we never overstaffed to get ourselves in trouble. So we always staffed up after we got the business. And so in that light, we were always on the right side of the cash flow.
Okay, great. Tell me, just over the decades of the experience, tell me about a time you and John went a direction that maybe was counter to what the rest of your competitors, or, a risk that you took in that, where you saw in the future and you're like, we need to move this way, even though everybody else is saying the sanity, the sure money is over here. What's that look like?
Most of our competition in the early days were equipment only suppliers. Okay, they supplied the basic air pollution control equipment and maybe the fan, the prime mover that goes with the equipment. But John and I saw a much more advantageous ability, to do turnkey systems. In other words, you give me the problem, let me provide the total solution for you. And so that is a route we went down that was very counter to what our competition was doing. And that worked out very well for us, because people in the world, whether they were in steel, cement, pulp and paper, whatever, they wanted total solutions. They didn't want just equipment. And so when we provided the total solution, you take a piece of equipment, it was a factor of one. If you supply the whole systems, that's 4 times the amount. So in other words, your sales volume and profitability quadrupled if you did the whole system. And that's how we grew our business, by going into total system supply with total solutions. But when you do that, you take on additional responsibilities. But we weren't afraid of it, because we were very good engineers.
Gotcha. Okay. Is this a matter of, like, the equipment suppliers would go in, they'd do the install, and then they'd walk away, but you guys were also doing, like, providing a service after the initial setup too?
No, these equipment suppliers would simply ship the equipment to the job site, let
Okay.
the client worry about how they would get it installed. We did it all, though. You give us the problem, we give you the solution, and it's turnkey. And when we're done, you have the problem solved. And that was our approach, that was different than our competition.
I'd imagine that made happier customers also, just because you guys had the experience of calibrating your own equipment and getting everything ready to go. They didn't have to figure it out and, follow instructions or bring in a consultant, which is probably what most of those companies had to do, is hire somebody else to come in and set it up. So,
That's correct. Yeah, and that was good, because after we got the system installed, we always stayed on board, with training sessions for most of these operations were 3-shift operations. So we would have training schools for each of the 3 shifts, and that might go on for as much as a month after we finished the job. That training school business was very helpful to our clients and customers, and the word got around to all the industries that, hey, Amerair does the complete job. They don't just leave you with the equipment. They give you the total solution.
Okay. Awesome. I want to move to the third company now. So you've been retired for 6 or 7 years, tired of playing golf every day. And like you said, your employees came and said, please come and start another company. One of the things that entrepreneurs get accused of all the time is boredom, getting bored with something. But you started 3 companies in same industry, similar problems, maybe scaling up a little bit there. Was there ever any concern with that third one of like, here we go again, we're doing this? Or what's your mindset at that point?
No, because but well, 2003 is when I got my previous employees in Amerex ringing me up on the phone and said, Bob, you need to start a new business. And I had been retired for a little over 6 years at that point. And can only build so many swing sets, and you can only build so many bridges across little creeks and such as that. And I did all those things, and we had a great time with the family and children. But their request for me to do that, and knowing the capability of the people that was requesting this, I thought, okay, I'll do that. We'll start a business, and I'll be your leader. And I was well known throughout the United States, and so my name carried a lot of weight in the air pollution control industry as far as immediate and very well thought of experience and know-how. And so that was what got the business the name and reputation to start. But my people, the people that wanted me to start this business, both pre-contract and post-contract, were so talented and so experienced. I didn't have to work hard. Okay. They did the work both pre-contract and post-contract and carried the ball. Of course, I went to meetings and participated in the sales and the closure of the business, and did things in post-contract as well. But my people were so knowledgeable and so good at what they did. I almost was a figurehead. Okay. And I like that new position too, because I didn't have to work as hard.
I like it. And this one, did you own this one 100% yourself, or did you have other people working in that one with you? Did the leadership team have an ownership stake?
I owned controlling interest in the company, but I had 2 other partners
Gotcha.
that
Okay.
had a minority interest.
Okay. I wanted to ask this because, being a leader for 50 years in 3 companies in the same field, it can be very easy I imagine, it can be very easy for your ego to be like, no, I know what I'm talking about. This is the direction. This is what needs to happen. How did you see in that new position the give and take of you're an engineer, you know what you're doing. You guys, you know what customers like. You've proven that over the years. How did you have to shift and say, no, I need to trust my people also and give and take on the input and everything from them too? How did that push you?
Well, it was interestingly enough, I hired people into my first, second, third company that came from where I learned my trade at American Air Filter in Louisville, Kentucky. Several of the key people that I hired into my first company, and Amerex and Amerair, my third company, came from people like American Air Filter and Wheelabrator and the big companies that were in the air pollution control business. So these were very skilled and knowledgeable people. Okay. They knew about, like, for instance, I had the best Venturi scrubber engineer in the country working with me, and still does to this day, even in the company that we're still running in Amerair. He's still working at this day. I'm 81 years old, and Gene is 79, and he's still doing his scrubbers. But he's only a consultant now, because he gives. We have a gentleman that took over the scrubber division, and Gene only consults if necessary.
Okay. Gotcha. I mean, obviously you have the story. Let's shift to the coaster now. You have the story of dinner at your daughter's and the need that you saw there for the coaster. How much of an overlap was there between, you said you've been running that one for about 6 years, so it sounds like there's about 4 years overlap between the 2 companies.
I'm not sure I'm following you there. When you say the 6 years, I was at my daughter's in October of 2023.
Okay.
Okay.
So you had already stepped away from the third company.
Exactly. Yes, I had. And as a matter of fact, December 31st, 2023 was my last day of employment. So it was just as I was closing out my involvement in the business on a regular basis that this coaster thing came to fruition. And it was just an idea, but it was, as I said, the coaster fell on my silk tie, my favorite silk tie, ruined it. And I said to my daughter, I said, these coasters that stick to your drink when you're having a sip of it, and then fall on your clothes or on your cocktail table or on the floor and stain your furniture or whatnot. They got to do something about that. Well, there's hundreds of coasters on the market today, but honestly, Barrett, this is the only one that really works. And the reason that's true, it's engineered. It's an engineered product.
So I guess talk to me about that. Like, what is the default coaster? Is what? Cork or some kind of absorbent material that's supposed to.
Well, most of the coasters, 80% of the coasters in the world are either paper, cork, or some foam with cork backing on them or whatever. None of them are particularly absorbent of the condensate, because if you've been into a bar and they give you a cardboard coaster with a Heineken label on it or something, if you stay there long enough, they saturate and they leave a moisture stain on the bar. And of course, that's not a desirable thing, but a little cardboard coaster doesn't cost much. It's a 10-cent item. And so they're used, 80% of the world market is those kind of coasters that are just throwaway coasters. But this coaster that I've invented is for people in their homes. If you've got some really nice furniture, whether it's in your golf club, your home, your professional association, and you want to protect your furniture, and you want to have something that's going to do that.
Gotcha.
And that's what this does. This protects furniture in every professional, amateur, domestic setting that you could possibly think of. And we're selling it in all areas today, be that a promotion. This can be a very promotional item. We have some clients in the golf world and in the beverage world that are buying these and sell as promotional items to their customers. And so but the key thing here is this coaster does what it's intended to do, and that's convey, collect, contain condensate so it doesn't get on your clothes, your cocktail table, or your carpet. This is an engineered coaster because it has capillary action in the grid that you see on top here. These little 1 millimeter semicircles that are in each of the grids, both horizontally and vertically, cause the condensate that comes off your glass to be delivered into the collection reservoir or pan. And that keeps it from getting on any of your valuables.
So it pools in the coaster, and then I guess the key is when you pick up your drink, it also stays on the table and doesn't come with the cup.
Exactly. The grid effect doesn't allow it to stick to your glass or cup. And so it's always easily for your drink container to remove from your coaster without adhering to it.
Gotcha. Okay. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation with Bob Labbe as much as I have. Here on the Art of Succession podcast, we have interviews with business owners twice a month with their own succession stories. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find the link for that down in the description below. If this episode has been helpful for you, I'd ask that you please share it with somebody else. It really helps out the show. And I want to thank you for watching the Art of Succession.